No one is above the law.
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 Well, remember that? Well, Democrats, they may want to practice what they preach, as two activist liberal judges were arrested this week for allegedly hiding illegal migrants from ICE. Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Vogel, along with Jason Chaffetz, Kevin Cork, and Molly Line. This is a brand new hour of the Big Weekend Show. The Department of Homeland Security is now warning that any activist judges who are thought to be harboring criminals will face the consequences. Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin joined us in the last hour to detail the efforts.
We've seen these activist judges trying to subvert the will of the American people. This is just beyond the pale. We are going to continue to go after these activist judges.
The courts have been going after Trump since his first term, and he's faced more nationwide injunctions than any president in recent history. And now the legal challenges against him, well, they're just piling up. All right, Jason, let me ask you, how is this a winning argument for Democrats?
It's not a winning argument, but it's all they got. The so-called resistance movement is going to take many things. It's going to be crashing these town hall meetings and causing disruptions. It's going to be going out and protesting, yelling and screaming, trying to create this aura that, everything, the place is in chaos. But the judges should know better. And the whole idea, the whole discussion, I hope this country continues to have about these activist judges, these people that take a political position rather than interpreting the law, and sanctuary cities, towns, counties, states. Hey, let's have that discussion in this country, because it ain't right.
It is just astonishing. And, you know, Kevin, you're in the middle of law school. You've got a year under your belt and a couple more to go. I did a semester of law school. You learn about so many cases and precedents that are set. Did you ever learn about a case where a judge intervened in this way?
Not in this particular way, although there are some. I know Molly's like,
go, Kevin, go. Yeah. You first.
If you remember the 1970s, it was this great show. Shaq would do this. Welcome back, Connor. If you're old enough to remember that, I want to hear from you on X.
Oh, and you will.
Yeah, I probably will. I love that you did that. No, but listen, I would just say it this way. Ultimately, we count on the judges, as Jason said, I think adroitly, to observe not just their oath, which is to interpret the law, but to be fair under the law. And ultimately, if you don't recognize the separation of powers, you're not doing your job. And not only that, you're actually hurting the American people. And I think we're seeing more of that since President Trump has gotten back into office than we ever have before. And I think hopefully, and I'm saying hopefully, I'm not holding my breath on this. I'm saying hopefully the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts, will do the right thing and rein this in and not be sort of squishy about this, because ultimately it's his responsibility, Amy Coney Barrett and others as well. You got to do the right thing. Separation of powers is a real thing. The president is the executive. He has the right to do a lot of these things. Make it so. Yeah, we'll see what they do on this. Molly, I want to ask you about this. Remember, in the last hour, we had the Assistant DHS Secretary on commenting on all these cases. She talked about this case of a 2-year-old and her mother who were deported. Let's listen to what she had to say about that.
Yes, in regard to the 2-year-old, this is a Honduran illegal immigrant as the mother, and she has 2 children, one of which was born in the U.S. and is a U.S. citizen, and the other which is a foreign-born child as well. And that mother had the option that she wanted to take both children back with her to Honduras. This is very common practice, but I do think it also shows that this administration, we really care about the safety of these children, and we've put together further safeguards such as biometrics testing and DNA to ensure that the children are actually children or relatives of these guardians and parents, because we've seen way too much of drug mules, human traffickers, sex traffickers exploiting these migrant children for their own disgusting gain.
Yeah, so she makes some excellent points there, but there's a lot of pushback on this.
Yeah, well, she's touched on something that the administration has said is one of their top 3 priorities when it comes to enforcement and when it comes to the border, when it comes to immigration, is that matter of ensuring the safety of children. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward, and if we see like I mentioned before, parents here in America that are left behind, that are not deported with their families, trying to bring their children back. It'll be interesting to see those legal cases if this sort of scenario continues to go forward. On the judge's angle, the judge that was taken into custody, it's remarkably similar to a case that happened in Massachusetts in 2018. A Massachusetts judge had allegedly, with ICE in the building in the courthouse, had allegedly allowed the court officer to take an illegal alien and put them out the Sally Port door. She was charged federally, but those charges were ultimately dropped later on, and then she went through a judicial misconduct investigation by the State Judicial Conduct Commission of Massachusetts. But it's happened before. So it'll be interesting to see if there are other judges that see this as valid activism and what comes of this case.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that history lesson.
There you go.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. And while some liberals protect illegals here in the U.S., as we're hearing about, a group of Democrats rushed to El Salvador to defend an MS-13 gang member.
If there's not due process for Kilmar, there will be no due process for anyone. And we are here fighting for the future of our democracy.
This is not just a threat to all people in the United States. This is what we all have been calling a constitutional crisis.
Kilmar needs to come home. We need to build support here in El Salvador, but also in the United States.
We have to make a big deal about this. Members of Congress have to come here.
Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen already grabbed a drink with Kilmar Abrego Garcia last week, ignoring his MS-13 ties, which is a change of tune from a 2017 social media post by Van Hollen, where he wanted the U.S. to target MS-13. But now Van Hollen is rushing to their defense, calling for Americans to boycott El Salvador over Abrego Garcia. Listen.
We can put pressure on the government of El Salvador. El Salvador is trying to strengthen its economy. Vote with your feet. There are lots of places to visit in Central America. Costa Rica is a beautiful place. You don't have to go to El Salvador.
But some on the far left think this obsession with the criminal gang member is hurting the party.
We've been talking about strong border security for so many years. When you're talking about bringing somebody, and I know there was due process questions from that was in Maryland and now in Salvador. I don't know if that's the right issue that Democrats should be focusing right now.
He is likely a gangbanger. I don't understand why you just don't argue the law instead of kind of making a George Floyd play with this guy like he's some kind of patron saint.
At least 11 Americans were killed by illegal gang members under the Biden administration, including these 4 innocent Americans who were brutally slain by undocumented MS-13 and Tren de Aragua members. You know, Jason, this effort by Senator Van Hollen seems sort of outrageous. You know, he's gone down there to meet with him and, you know, to sort of defended this whole situation. Now he's calling for a boycott of El Salvador. I thought you were elected to Congress to represent the U.S. citizen.
Oh, this is where the Democratic Party is today. They're going to go to the mat. They will go to other countries to fight to get gang-banging people back into this country instead of the victims and the innocents. And you know what? How about the people who come here legally and lawfully? Exactly. We underserve them. We don't take care of them. They make all this, oh, we got to take care of the rule of law and all that. Well, the rule of law, if you want to claim asylum, is to come in through the front door. You actually have to go to a port of entry and make that claim, not be coming in by the millions. So it's all one-sided with them. It just appears as if every single time they're fighting for the criminal element instead of Americans and the people who come here legally and lawfully. And that's what's so disgusting about their efforts.
You know, his wife filed reports saying that she was abused by him. Anybody jump in on this one? Where are the women's rights groups saying believe all women and defending women who have been victims of domestic violence?
Molly?
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me when we talk about El Salvador, he's saying don't travel there. The United States has changed their travel designation. It is now safer there than it had been previously under this President Bukele, who came to the White House. He was reelected in a landslide. And the prisons that they're talking about down there, he says this is the reason why. Now, there are human rights groups that argue that there are too many people being swept up and put into these prisons. But the point that this president, El Salvador's President Bukele, was making at the White House is that he took a country that had been the murder capital of that area, that part of the hemisphere of the world, and turned it into a safe place. And now our State Department says it's safer to travel there. So it's been fascinating to see that aspect of this as well.
Yeah, it is bizarre. Yeah. And while Democrats try to bring gang members back to the U.S., the FBI is warning that members of the Venezuelan government are using Tren de Aragua to undermine public safety in the U.S., saying that TDA could be used to threaten or kill anyone critical of the Maduro regime. This is not the first time a foreign enemy has attempted to send their worst to the U.S. We witnessed a similar situation during the 1980 Mariel boat lift when Fidel Castro released his prisoners into South Florida.
For Fidel Castro, it was tantamount to an act of genocide. With one fell swoop, he rid Cuba of thousands and thousands of undesirables. He emptied his prisons. He cleared the bums off the streets of Havana. Murderers, thieves, perverts, prostitutes, all were rounded up, sent to Mariel Harbor, and put aboard boats bound for Miami.
Okay. I love the old news clip there.
Yeah.
But, you know, Kevin, if this is true and Venezuela is sending these people here to, you know, do all kinds of nefarious things, I mean, would you consider this an act of war?
I wouldn't consider it an act of war. I would consider it an act of statescraft. Understand that if you go anywhere around the globe, they have their own version of the Secret Service. They have their own version of the CIA. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some folks in the intelligence agencies in these respective countries that do want to get their people here, especially, Jason mentioned it, 10 million people just sort of pour over the border. We have no idea who's here. We could have sleeper cells here. We could have agents here. We simply don't know. They give a fake ID, a fake name. Who knows who's in the country? I'm not surprised that this has happened. I'm just surprised that more people aren't calling this out. And I guarantee you, it's not just them. It's probably a number of other countries as well.
Well, you know, Jason, people scoffed at President Trump when he said other countries are not sending their best, but it seems that he may have been onto something.
Yeah.
Well, back when I was in Congress years ago, I went to one of the detention facilities in Arizona. And one of the things that strikes you when you go there is there are people represented from more than 150 countries.
Yeah.
It's not just Mexico or El Salvador. People, I think, have a tendency to think, oh, this is about Central South America. No, we're talking about tens of thousands of Chinese nationals.
Yeah.
Why are they being sent here?
Correct.
People coming from all over the world that are making their way here. And don't think that they're all just coming to, pick vegetables or do something. A lot of them have some very nefarious intent. And we better get a grip on that because those people need to be targeted and expelled as well. Not just the criminal element, people who are doing the intellectual, trying to get at our intellectual property, people that are spying on America, those two also need to be prosecuted. And they need to be targeted and they need to be expelled.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Molly, real quick, is the mainstream media going to report on any of this? Real quick.
I believe that they'll have their take, I guess. It would be real quick.
All right, we will see. Well, coming up on this brand new hour of the Big Weekend Show, you will not believe which deep blue city is now protesting against homeless shelters. Plus, one Democrat governor is giving out forgivable home loans to citizens based on race. I thought that was illegal, but we'll talk about it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.